Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and Tyrese Haliburton are remaining in the playoffs, and one of them will be winning their first ring. But what will a ring mean for each of them? Shai is considered the best player left in the finals. However, many did have questions about how his style of play would do in the playoffs, which I thought was silly because I had felt that he played well in the playoffs last year, even though it had resulted in a second round exit. Well, it's pretty clear now that his style of play does translate to the playoffs, and for any of the doubters coming into these playoffs, he's proven them wrong. His postseason run this year and last year confirmed for me that he is not a playoff dropper. He can average 30 points on good efficiency, even in a more physical style of setting. The first thing that changes for him with the championship this year would be him becoming a top 3 player in the league, right now with arguments for him to be number 2. Right now, the consensus is that Jokic and Giannis are the 2 best players in the world. Coming into the season, Luka and Tatum were most likely ranked ahead of Shai. A ring for him this year, I think, would put him at the 3rd best player in the world at a minimum. You may not like his playstyle, but with the season he has put together, I believe that top 3 would be undeniable. The next thing that I think Shai would accomplish is him becoming the greatest Canadian player ever. The only competition for him is obviously Steve Nash, and maybe this is controversial, but I do think that a championship would result in him becoming the greatest Canadian player already. Nash would have 2 MVPs to SGA's 1. Obviously, those ones were more controversial, and at no point was, I think, Steve Nash considered a top 3 player. LeBron, Kobe, Dirk, Kevin Garnett, Wade, and Tim Duncan, I think, were considered better players than him. And Shai's peak this year is better than any season that Nash has ever had. He would also have a championship, and I'm assuming a finals MVP, which Nash does not have. Not only does Nash not have a ring, but he's never made the finals. Of course, Nash has more accomplishments and a longer career, but sometimes players do so much in a short period of time that it's hard to deny them. Another conversation, which I believe is probably even more controversial than him becoming the greatest Canadian player, is Shai becoming the greatest Thunder ever. Of course, his competition is Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. Right now, each of them have an MVP with OKC, which now Shai also has. However, neither KD or Westbrook were able to win a title, and SGA would be the player to deliver the franchise their first championship ever. KD also didn't leave the team on the best terms, leaving many fans with a sour taste in their mouth and causing them to ignore everything he's done for the franchise. Westbrook is more loved in OKC for what he did after KD left, but he did not accomplish what Shai is about to when he was the best player on the team. I believe nostalgia may stop fans from ranking SGA ahead of KD and Westbrook from being the best player in that franchise's history, but I think it would be true. Also, let me make this clear, this is not the same as the all-time rankings. SGA would not be ranked ahead of Durant in the all-time rankings, but just in that franchise's history. And just more evidence to support all these claims about how impressive SGA was this season, only 8 players have won an MVP and a Finals MVP in the same season. Those players are Kareem, Moses Malone, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Hakeem Olajuwon, Shaq, Tim Duncan, and LeBron James. That would be the company he'd be joining, assuming he wins the Finals MVP. The last player to do it was LeBron in 2013. So ultimately, with the ring this season, I believe SGA becomes a consensus top 3 player in the league, the greatest Canadian basketball player of all time, and the greatest Thunder of all time. In this one season, he could potentially be on the team with the most wins, have the scoring title, win the MVP, win a championship, and the Finals MVP. Shai has the opportunity to put his name alongside elite company. Moving on to Tyrese Haliburton. What does a championship mean for Tyrese Haliburton? I genuinely do not know. I know that seems like a cop-out, but if the Pacers win this championship, I don't know the conversations that will take place. We are under the impression that to win a championship, you need a top 10 guy in the league on your team. Going into this season, probably going into the playoffs a little over a month ago, Haliburton wasn't in a lot of people's top 10. He may not even have been in some people's top 15. So if he were to win, his place amongst the current stars becomes a very interesting conversation. His place in the top players of the league feels so volatile. If he were to win, he might propel into crazy conversations, but a loss and maybe poor play against that OKC defense will result in people talking about how he's the player they thought he was all along. If he's being ranked ahead of guys like Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson right now, then a loss might drop him back below those guys. It may be unfair, but we are all victims of recency bias. Now, win might make him the greatest Pacer ever. He doesn't have the time spent in a Pacer jersey, but he would be well on track to become that with the ring right here. As of right now, Reggie Miller is the greatest Pacer ever, having spent 18 years in the NBA, all with the Pacers. His clutch and legendary moments have made him become the greatest Pacer of all time. However, Haliburton in this single playoff run has had multiple clutch moments, and if it were to be topped off by a ring, we will look back on the moments he's had that led him to that title. He does not have the longevity, obviously, but that ring might outweigh anything any Pacer has ever done in their franchise history, especially with how this feels like a Cinderella run. They're massive underdogs against the Thunder, and many are still shocked to even see them in this position in the finals. This conversation about the Pacers is similar to the one about OKC in the sense that a ring isn't everything, but the first in your franchise is. If Shai or Haliburton were to win a ring for a franchise that has seen championships, it most likely doesn't make you the greatest in the history of that franchise. But when we're talking about teams who have never won, it certainly becomes a discussion to have. Ultimately, the conversation around Shai is much more clear if they were to win a title. I can see how he will be talked about. Conversations about Haliburton, if he were to win, are not very clear to me. I don't know how exactly he will be talked about, but I do assume he will be very polarizing.